Today we are going to talk about a tool called coaching through advocacy. This is a tool that I've used many times, and I've advised others as well to use, where you help a third person, help somebody who comes into your office kind of complaining about a situation or a person in the company that they have difficulty dealing with, and they are trying to represent their view and are not totally fully representing that other person's view, the third person who is not in the room. In fact, recently I wrote an article for the Food for Thought series that I write on coaching through advocacy. In that article, I was lamenting about the fact that the political conversations of the time, and I don't know what time you'll be watching this video, but the current times in the United States, the political conversations have come to a stalemate where neither party, on whatever side you're on, they're not talking to each other. So I had suggested a method for people to discuss very differing points of views, and I'll talk about that at the end of this tool as well. But they're all techniques of coaching through advocacy. By advocating a point of view that you do not believe in, you actually gain greater respect for the view that you do not believe in. That's the fundamental principle of coaching through advocacy. So let us say that Mary walks into your office and starts talking to you about the difficulty Mary has with Susan in the accounting department. Mary is telling you about how, Susan in the accounting department just doesn't understand Mary's problems. Mary has all these different needs. Susan is so rigid about how she wants things done. It's so difficult in the business environment that Mary is in, and Mary is having a hard time explaining to Susan why it is difficult. Susan refuses to listen. Susan is not understanding of the real business needs. She's just a number pusher. She wants it her way, and Mary is complaining about this to you, and you are sitting there listening. Coaching through advocacy suggests that you ask Mary to become Susan. So tell Mary, say, listen, now mind you have to do this after you've listened to Mary, so you understand Mary's issues with Susan. Having completely understood that, now you tell Mary, why don't you, let's role play here. Let's role play where you, Mary, you are Susan, and I am going to be Mary. And me, Mary, is going to come to you, Susan, and we are going to have a conversation. Your job is to role play as Susan would have. And my job is to role play as Mary. And I'm going to do as good a job as I possibly can as Mary. Likewise, I want you to do as good a job as you possibly can as Susan. And start a conversation. And now you start talking to this Susan about your issues, just as Mary had told you. Now, typically what that person would say, who's pretending to be Susan but really is Mary, she would say, you're right, because after all, you have just, enumerated her points. At which point you stop her and say, no, wait a minute, you are Susan. You have to be like Susan now. After a few attempts of this, that person will finally get it into their head. They have to play the role of Susan, and they will start talking about as if Susan was speaking. That's when you make progress. That's when they become more aware of Susan's real problems, are able to represent Susan's issues. In fact, initially, you know what the concern would be? By vocalizing Susan's position, they would be afraid that they would somehow add credence to Susan's position. So Mary, who's acting like Susan, would try to temper Susan's position, force them to advocate it with full passion and strength. When they do, when that conversation occurs, you would have coached them through advocacy. By advocating the other point of view, that person would have become more sympathetic, more compassionate for that other point of view. What the result of that, conversations alone will tell. But the technique is very powerful. Now, how do you use that in a larger environment? If you have in your business a situation, an issue, a decision that needs to be made where there are two camps, two distinct camps, camp A, camp B. Some people think A is the right way to go, some people think B is the right way to go. Here's what you do. Find an ardent supporter of A and find an ardent supporter of B. Call them in and tell them that you have an exercise for them. Here's the job you want them to do. Have A advocate B's position. Have B advocate A's position. Call a whole meeting, very ceremonious meeting. Have your direct team sitting right there. All the other people in the company who are in some way affected by the decision sitting at the peanut gallery. The two people that you have selected up on stage or at the front of the room, and they advocate. The supporter of A is advocating B, the B position. The supporter of B is advocating the A position. And you guys, you and your senior advisors, you question them and they have to continue to advocate the position they don't believe in. Finally, you relieve them of their duties, have them join you at the seat, now have a conversation where they are not constrained by that requirement, so that they can speak their real position. This process where they are forced, an individual is forced to advocate another's point of view, really makes people much more cognizant, more sympathetic, more compassionate to that alternate point of view. The advocacy of the other point of view creates new understanding of that point of view. Coaching through advocacy.